Hey guys, on today's episode, I wanted to talk about the various ways of recovering. If you're like me, start to get sober, and the first thing you probably hear about is a 12-step recovery program. It's the most common known thing, at least in the US. I don't know about other countries so much. My experience here in India is AA isn't so common, and I know I'm breaking anonymity by calling it AA. Totally okay with that. And that will actually be part of this episode, talking about anonymity and how I choose to break mine, because for me, I can't recover in silence. I can't recover anonymously. I have to be out and about it. And I'm very open about the fact that I do AA, that I've done AA in the past. But I also haven't only done AA. The internet, Facebook, Instagram, stories, blogs, videos, podcasts have all been a major part of my recovery. And what is interesting is when I first got sober, nobody said, "Hey Brandy, go and listen to this podcast. Hey Brandy, go and join this online group." I had to research these things by myself in order to find them, in order to start using them. And that's a sad fact. Here we are in this age, in this time in history where we use the internet for everything. If you're like me, I'm on Facebook a lot, or Instagram. And so I follow all these sober accounts of women and men getting sober, sharing their progress, inspiring each other every single day. And it keeps me sober because I'm not alone. Now, I'm not throwing shade on the 12 steps of recovery, because it has been a huge part of my recovery process, working the steps, using the steps, having a sponsor, sponsoring women. But that's not the only thing that works. And so much store is set aside for this program of recovery, which doesn't always have the best results. It's not for everybody. And I know I'm going to get a lot of people who know me in real life that are going to be like, "I can't believe you said that." But it's the truth. And I've seen it firsthand. I run a group for people who are seeking recovery from drugs, alcohol, eating disorders, etc., who get into sobriety to save their lives because other things don't work for them, whether it's 12-step recovery program or smart recovery or refuge recovery or any other type of recovery, because there's a lot of programs. But what matters most in recovery is what's working for you. And it takes a lot of time and patience to figure out what's going to work for you. You may try 15 things before you figure out it's a combination of all of those 15 things that works for you. For example, me. I got sober and I was recommended to join a 12-step program, which I did. I got the sponsor, started working the steps. For about 6 months, it was fine. And then her and I started drifting apart. Now, I don't know about you, but when I'm 6 months sober and my life is crazy and I'm a mom and I'm trying to stay sober, not drink, deal with a relationship that isn't always great, deal with kids who, to be honest, know the buttons to push and are a lot of responsibility and work, and you don't really get a day off, it's a lot to take on. And then this person that's supposed to be your confidant is kind of like spacing you, and all of a sudden you're alone. And what are you supposed to do? Yeah, you can fire the sponsor, which in itself is this huge ordeal. Like, now I have to fire somebody, and what's with the word fire? Do I let her go? Is she laid off? Do I replace her? See, all of these words are very strong and hurtful and scary, especially as someone who tends to people please and wants everybody to be happy and just wants to be like everybody else. And then you're supposed to find a new one. So now you have to go approach a new person. So as someone newly sober, new recovery, you're jumping into this program, which is amazing, and the steps are amazing. But to get someone to walk through them can be very, very intimidating. Granted, if you're like me, you overthink everything. So it's not as bad as it seems at first, but until you get into it, it can be very scary. And then you have your head that you have to combat against. And sometimes my head is very loud. My head tells me that I don't need a sponsor, and I don't need to work the steps, and I don't need to go to meetings. So how do I fill that void? How do I fill that void of being afraid to talk to people, being afraid to fire somebody, being afraid to approach somebody, being afraid to go to a place where people are going to physically see me and expect me to talk to them? How do I recover then? Because I know I can't do it alone, because alone means sitting in a dark room by myself drinking beer, or sitting in a room by myself watching TV drinking beer, hiding beer all over the house. How do I do it if I don't want to go to meetings, if I can't go to meetings, if life is so complicated and I feel so alone? How can I stay sober while still staying in recovery, still working on myself without having to drive somewhere? And this is where, for me, online really became a huge part of my recovery. So ever since, even before I started questioning my drinking, I had been looking on Facebook, searching sober groups, alcoholic groups, alcoholism, drug addiction, anything that could help me stop drinking, because I knew I had a problem, even though I wasn't ready to admit it. I didn't know how to stop, but I wanted to talk to people who were like me without actually having to talk to them. I wanted to read their stories without them knowing exactly about me. So I found some Facebook groups, joined them, and once I hit my bottom in December of 2015, I really started using them, posting every single day, sometimes twice a day. I would post every single thought that was going through my head, because it was a safe space of people who understood my misery, my tragedies, my happiness, my fears, my every single thing. They got it. And once I started sharing it with them, it became easier. And so when I started going to meetings, it became easier, because now I was used to sharing with people. Now I could share with them in person. Aside from posting in groups, I started hosting and taking part of webinars in these groups, to the point where I was gaining friends and a tribe online, and then I was doing it with meetings in person. So I had this group to the point where at 6 months, when that sponsor and I weren't connecting, I could just leave the 12-step program for a while. And I chose to do that. I stopped going to meetings and I focused solely on the online recovery. I joined various groups. Some were women only, some were co-ed. They had webinars, and I started working it. I was listening to podcasts every single day, including Recovery Elevator and Share Podcasts, and which has now changed to the Recovery Revolution. I joined the She Recovers movement, which is all women who are recovering from something. And about 12 months into it, right when I was 1 year, I had moved to Southern California from Northern California, and I went back to a 12-step program, because for me, online wasn't enough. I also needed to have women in my life who were in a program. Being a mom, being a parent, being a woman, it can be lonely. And I wanted friends, and I wanted people in person. I started hosting meetups. I created my own podcast. I created my own sober group. I created my own blog. And I started training to become a recovery coach, which I'm now a recovery coach. I have my podcast. I have this YouTube channel. And being in India, a country where meetings are hard to come by and alcoholism isn't a thing, at least not a socially accepted thing, because alcoholism is worldwide. Drinking heavily is worldwide. Online is my source of recovery. So for those wondering, how can I recover without leaving my home? Online. Join a group. Reach out to somebody who's posting about a group. Sober is the new thing. There's so many people around me every single day that haven't drank, don't drink, are in recovery, and they're so willing to share their process, their progress, what they went through, how they did it. And it just takes you connecting with one person. You're never alone. You don't have to follow the same path that everybody else has, and you can combine it. My recovery, online, some meetings, a sponsor, a sponsee, posting, blogging, videoing, everything, because it works for me. some days, some of those things don't apply, and other days, some of them apply more than others. So keep reaching out and don't give up on your recovery. Thanks, guys.